Tomb Raider 2013. For the longest time, I was part of the original is the best Tomb Raider camp. Of course, this is because I never had a chance to try or play the later games. And then I actually played it for the podcast games my mom found, and it really unlocked the thrill of the open world game for me. Now, this game is the start of what is commonly called the Survivor timeline. It's actually in this timeline when we see Laura have her survival event. And instead of a plane this time, it is basically a ship wrecking onto an island and surviving and getting off that island. This time, however, the island is basically a lost kingdom that they were actually searching for. See, the ship that she was on, called the Endeavor, if I remember right, was going in search of the lost kingdom of Yamatai. And Laura's friend Sam, or Samantha, she's actually a descendant of one of the people who had been in that kingdom. Now, of course, Laura is not the big archaeologist that she will become. And her father was an excellent archaeologist. Unfortunately, something happened in that time. He has been long dead. Well, he's been dead for a while. Well, as you can imagine, this expedition would definitely be a boon for Laura. She knows what she's doing to an extent. Unfortunately, she doesn't know everything about the situation. How storms always seem to trap people on this island. In fact, it starts off by trying to survive, being shipwrecked and rejoining her friends. In fact, she gets caught by somebody. She has to escape, causing herself a nasty bit of an injury, which she will eventually get treated. And she is basically learning to survive on the fly, which literally is what usually happens to Laura as part of her, grow up into becoming the survivor. And let's face it, people will complain about this version of Laura, but this is Laura becoming the survivor. Every timeline we've seen of Laura, she is already this rough. She's survived. And she does have a love for archaeology. However, she is also more science-based in her thinking until this point. You see, once she escapes from this, from her captor, she is learning on the fly, having to make equipment sometimes, like a bow, or finding equipment. And this equipment she can upgrade as the game progresses, as you find materials. And that's another thing, you're finding stuff. You're building up skills that should help her. You find what you need. You don't have infinite ammo or anything like that. But as Laura's trying to find her way to the others, which she is successful, we also meet a man who's been on the island for a while, Matthias. And I must admit, Sam does let out a little bit more info than she should be. But after meeting this man, Laura and the quote real archaeologist slash showman of the group, it's his program that was funding this exploration. They go find a doorway. Of course, in the time that they are checking this out, Matthias has disappeared with Sam. And they get through this doorway and discover there's a lot more people on the island. In fact, there's a whole group of crazy people. And their leader is actually Matthias. I mean, you get to go through a former village on this island. And of course, you run into Roth when you get to that village or get past those thugs, which leads to some help, and you have to get a radio signal out. Well, apparently, it looks like maybe some Russians or Chinese or something was on this island at one point, because there's a radio base on it. I mean, I definitely have questions about some of this, but you have to work your way up the mountain to that, and then down the mountain after you manage to get through to an airplane to call for help. Which that doesn't go well. The storms appear again, knock it down. And now things are even crazier because now all the local thugs are doing what they can to keep the group from trying to get off the island. In fact, as Laura tries to find one of the pilots, there's sort of a trap there, but also a new threat shows up, the Oni. The Oni, the one super, well, another supernatural element of this island. The Oni, the Storm Guard. In fact, Laura is, during what happens here, Laura gets knocked out. She wakes up sort of in one of the Oni's food stores. She manages to, of course, get out of that, get to a safe point, get away from there. And, in turn, makes her way down to a shanty town. I mean, this thing was put together by Matthias's group, sort of in the shadow of the palace of Yamatai. It's also during this time that we start learning about that Sam appears to be a perfect vessel for Queen Himiko. Whose spirit is still on the island. It's the one causing all the storms. We also find all our friends sort of trapped in geothermal caves, a way that Matthias uses to break people down so that they willingly join his cause. So, of course, we rescue our friends. And, of course, during getting to those caves and getting into the castle, we find out that, well, one of the crew has escaped. He's a tough old bird. Of course, he ends up dying because, trying to help Laura. Another helicopter comes through. Of course, just as they're storming the palace. And we, of course, find the showman. He's been allowed some free reign, which doesn't set well with Laura. In fact, this makes her trust him even less. Of course, some things we discover, he's going to do what he can to make sure he gets all the credit. That won't work out well for him in the long run. Of course, as he does all he can to make sure he stays in the clear, Laura finds Sam, rescues Sam, also advises Sam not to get on the helicopter. She ends up, though, getting on the helicopter with Roth, and the helicopter, of course, crashes. Again, Queen Himiko won't let anyone leave. Now, of course, Laura then has to make her way down to the beach where everybody is gathered, except the showman, at least for now. And once we get down there, Laura, they find a ship that they can repair. Laura's now getting the sense these storms are some sort of supernatural thing. She's heard it say no one leaves in Japanese. So that's telling her this is something spiritual, supernatural. We're going to have to figure out what's keeping us here and find a way to break that. Of course, some of the others are picking up on this, but they also have to get gear together. And in fact, some of it's on the ship, which is now sort of in the nearby harbor. So we go there, and of course, who else is there? Matthias's goon squad. So again, we have to kick their asses, but of course, we have another loss to the team. Guy who had a crush on Laura. And it's going to take them some hours to fix the ship up, or fix up a little tugboat they found. Laura basically says, I'm going to check something, because she went through a Japanese base to get over to that ship, and there is another Japanese base higher up. In fact, as Laura goes up to this Japanese base, it seems that they find the resting chamber, or the original chamber, where Himiko would transfer her powers. You see, Himiko had powers, and she was not going to die. In some of the things you find, documentation, you find out that she transfers her soul during the special ceremony to a hand-picked handmaiden. But during the fateful one, the handmaiden knew what was coming and didn't want it to happen. So as the transfer ritual was started, the handmaiden killed herself, causing Himiko to be now trapped. Her soul in a dead body. This is what starts the curse. The only way they can get her out, or to get free, is to basically destroy the vessel that currently has the soul. Or if they start a ritual, get rid of the body during the ritual. Hence, why they need Sam. Sam is a perfect vessel. Of course, by the time we get down there, we find out, get done up there and head back down to the beach, we find that Matthias's goons have been attacking, and the showman has indeed taken Sam during the ruckus back to Matthias. You see, he has figured out that he thinks that he has worked out something with Matthias. They'll both end up on the, he'll end up famous for this. So what if there's a few bodies lost in the process? And at this time, Matthias is taking Sam and, of course, Mr. Showman up to the Storm Guard's fortress. Because up at the top of the Storm Guard's fortress is another site to perform the ceremony. It's actually the site or something. I think what we saw earlier, if I remember right now, was her general's tomb, where he knew what had happened. And that the Oni still guard and protect Himiko. Of course, they're not necessarily going to let anyone get near Himiko, even to perform the ritual. Which is why Matthias is using Mr. Showman as a distraction. And of course, Laura follows, and now you have a race. Laura has to get through the treacherous area, caused treacherous for the high winds, the falling apart structures, as well as getting past the storm guard. And that's not going to all be easy. You have to get all the way to the top. Just as Matthias starts the ritual, and you have to work your way over there so you can kick his ass and stop the ritual. Which, all throughout this game, Laura will learn a proficiency with various weapons. Bow and arrow, pistol, shotgun, automatic rifle. And building them up by finding scraps and using them to improve the guns and the bows and arrows. You even find special parts going around. In the end, you even get special arrows that you can use, like you get the ability to shoot one with a rope attached to it, or a flaming arrow, gun with a silencer. In the end, of course, we get to the top, we stop him, Matthias, leading to another battle, and you have to fight him, and even pick up a gun he drops. So Laura now has her signature 2 guns, which I got to admit, now you do a little bit of the firing of the 2 guns, but I've always thought that wasn't necessarily a stable method. I like how in this one you sort of have to you get to rely more on the various weapons and using them as tools. I mean, you'll run across barriers in this game that you can only get out of the way by blasting them with a shotgun, or using a bow and arrow to launch a rope and pulling on the areas, lighting up torches to show the way. It's, of course, all this to save a friend and finally get them off the island. Which starts this whole Laura's adventures in this timeline. Now, I mean, this is a game that also relies on building up your skills using experience, or earning experience as you hunt, advance in the game to build up experience. And because you will be able to, get stuff for crafting, you want to explore. And you get what they call in this series survivor vision. I mean, other game, Assassin's Creed calls it eagle vision. It helps you find things, even things for a challenge. They have challenges in each area that you can complete. I mean, some can be a little bit easier than others. Like one is lighting all the statues in an area, or raiding all the eagle nests in an area. And you have tombs hidden all over the island. Some are small, some are big. Each one has a different way of solving and getting to the key item. And of course, if you get to a key item in its tomb, you basically get a map of everything in the area. And you get other things as well. I mean, you find things on the island. There's some history behind them. In fact, some of them even let you look at them further to find out something. And each quote tomb is a puzzle in and of itself. And a DLC that comes with, I believe, the Game of the Year edition basically gives you something neat too. Now, is this game... This is a Tomb Raider game that allows you a little bit more open world movement and exploring in an area. You get to love all these characters, you get to feel the loss that some of them happen. You get to see Laura evolve from the person who's never had to do this shit to the person who has to do this shit. And find out, you set the things up. You find documents that will reveal some of the lore of the game. So don't necessarily overlook them. Try and find them all if you can. You get experience for them too. Also the same if you find all the items in a collection. However, there is something that you need to look out for. Something was added in for the Game of the Year edition, and that is GPS caches. Finding all of them gets you a message from the group that's going to be an overall antagonist for the rest of this timeline. A group called Trinity. In fact, Trinity has been a thorn in Laura's side before she even knew who they were. Of course, this gets discussed more in the next title in this timeline. Now, if you can set aside what the original Tomb Raider games were, you will actually find this to be a fun game. I mean, let's face it, for some people, this is their Tomb Raider experience. For older people, like myself, the original is our Tomb Raider. But that doesn't mean that this isn't a good game. This is a great game, in my opinion. And it has a lot to offer. And that's all I'm going to say about the Tomb Raider 2013 First of the Survivor timeline. I would definitely recommend it, especially if you are more open to get open world games like Assassin's Creed and that. And if you've never played an open world game, I would recommend playing this as your introduction to them. It can greatly open up your eyes to what the open world game format is. And, like I said, that's all I'm going to say about this. I hope you've enjoyed hearing me talk about this game. You can hear me talk more about it in a particular episode of Games My Mom Found, where we actually did cover the 3 games of this. We covered each of the games I'll try and find the link to it and put in the comments in the description. So, until next time, take care all and have fun. Bye.